Order the Cuyahoga County's special meeting for Tuesday, December the 29th, 2015. Clerk, would you please call roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller is absent at the moment.
He's upstairs.
Mr. Germana. Here. Mr. Gallagher. Here. Mr. Schrun.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown is absent at the moment. Mr. Hairston.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Greenspan. Mr. Greenspan is absent today. And President Brady.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, Councilman Greenspan, I know, is out of town.
Yes.
Did anybody else call in and indicate that they were not going to be here?
I was under the impression that all the remaining council members would be here.
I just didn't want to excuse someone who's maybe walking the door in 60 seconds, right?
Right.
Could I have a motion to excuse Councilman Greenspan from the meeting?
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The councilman is excused. Any public comment related to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Al Porter. Let the record reflect that Mr. Miller is now in attendance.
Okay.
I thank you very much. I would like to first thank the Creator for allowing me to speak, as well as definitely being able to speak in front of Cuyahoga County Council members. When it comes to the agenda, I'm very concerned, and the reason I am is looking at what the prosecutor has put into motion. You look at the $5,000 in other expenses, $2,000 and all $7,000 is basically general fund purposes underneath the PR 191056. And then I look at the child support personal services of $8,000 under PR 200071, child and family service personnel and personnel service under PR 720 under $5,000. And that's the budget that I'm looking at as being approved. And my question is, right now, I definitely have personal issues that my money is not being spent properly, and that many of our residents' money is not being spent properly. I have questions that when you end up not being able to at least do your job as properly as you should, and you have to send for outside experts at taxpayers' money, when you should be able to do certain things out of your own personal income, it makes things very interesting. I'm sure a lot of you all have worked with legal as well as lawyers, attorneys, what have you, and I feel a judge and a former judge like McGinty should have been able to look at the fact that a prosecutor's job is not to spend money on bringing in witnesses that would help the defense. A prosecutor's job is to prosecute. A defense person's job is to bring in extra experts to help them out. And if it takes you almost 400 days from a shooting that happened at Cadell, or we're over a year with Tanisha Anderson, or it took almost 2 years to deal with, I will say, 137 shots atrocity, then you have to look at the fact that somebody may be inept at their job, and maybe you need to personally put a limit on their spending, or at least somebody out of this council should oversee their money much more closer and make sure that they're doing the wise thing and they are making wise decisions. I'm not a legal scholar, but I know enough of a fact that if Ohio is an open carry state, that means you're able to carry a weapon on the outside at all times. Then I would have thought the prosecutor would have been able to hold the police more accountable, that you don't roll up and shoot anybody until you look and see what the situation is, because this is an open carry state. That means I can walk up and down the street if I want to. It's been proven in Akron. They've had the open carry movement in Public Square. So those are just a couple of things that we need to definitely look at, and I appreciate you for your time today.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Kim Brown.
Good morning, everyone. I see I'm not going to have much time, but I'm going to speak on more of a personal note. I am a criminal justice major, so I do know the law. I actually received a full scholarship out of high school, so I court reported for 10 and a half years, and I've worked at juvenile court for 10 years, and have developed the carpal tunnel, so I think I probably should have taken my scholarship and did something else with it. But anyway, I look at municipal court funds, $45,000. Recently, I had a false police report. I've actually had 2 filed on me. Never had a record, never been in any trouble, but I did spend 3 days in jail. And this was due to a filing in the municipal court under a Judge Cassidy, Marilyn B. Cassidy. Actually, there were 2 filed, one on my son, this was a former girlfriend, and 2 days later, one on me. Took care of my mom the past 3.5 years after working since I was 14. My mom taught her 10 kids after graduating, all 10 of them from Maple Heights High School. So we are well educated. I'm not understanding how a judge, which was Marilyn B. Cassidy, can tell me to leave her courtroom, how she can make slanderous statements to me. I have properly filed on her. I have went to Judge Adrian, who was the administrative judge. I see nothing that I have driven to Columbus. And if I have to, I will go to Washington because it's not going to die. Now, with my case, this female, she text messaged herself after stealing my son's phone and having him arrested. My son made a mistake, ignorant mistake, by not, he used to talk to this female. 8 months later, she knocks on his door after he'd gotten his cell phone changed because there was problems after knowing her a year, her and her daughter, a 10-year-old daughter. My son doesn't have any kids. He owns his own tap dance studio, has been to college, back in college twice. So he has admitted to me while he's sitting over at the workhouse now, works a full-time job, which will probably be gone by the time. But anyway, she gave him 90 days. She denied so much, and his attorney was Anthony Jordan, which we were referred to, which was a joke. And I actually had to let him know, you robbed my son, and you funded, I did not know he was running for judge, you funded because you didn't have one witness come to the court hearing, so really, you deprived my son. And then a Brenda Bickerstaff, he asked me to pay $500 to, which I did, for investigation. You know who went over to Euclid and found out? Because I told them, this female has lived in Euclid, so let's start from there. One police report would have solved all of this from my son receiving 90 days, where 6 females beat her up after spitting on someone and she was kicked out of her place. So I'm going to continue for justice. I will never allow a domestic violence case on my son. So I'm outraged at how the money is being spent with the municipal court. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. President, that's the last speaker at this moment, but we do have one for non-agenda related items at the end. I'd also like to let the record reflect that Ms. Brown and Ms. Simon are in attendance.
Okay. Legislation introduced by the executive, consideration of a resolution, first reading adoption under suspension of rules.
Motion to suspend the rules?
Could I have a motion to suspend the rules? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Go ahead and read the.
Resolution number 2015-0282, a resolution amending the 2014-2015 biennial operating budget for 2015 by providing for additional fiscal appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources, for appropriation transfers between budget accounts, and for cash transfers between budgetary funds in order to meet the budgetary needs of various county departments, offices, and agencies, amending resolution number 2015-0264 dated December 8, 2015 to reconcile appropriations for 2015 and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Could I have a motion to adopt? So moved. Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. The administration has, this morning, brought over some small additional items to us concerning this piece of legislation. Is there someone who can speak to that from the administration? Like it's the fiscal officer or somebody? Councilman Miller has been made aware of this just a few minutes ago.
Mr. President, on behalf of the fiscal office, we just completed some final adjustments yesterday that came out of additional reconciliations that we were doing. So we need to get those adjustments processed so that we don't run into a non-sufficient fund situation before the end of the year. We appreciate the council having the meeting this late in the year. It's allowed us to keep the books open. As you remember, last year, their spending was cut off fairly early in the fall. We were cutting checks most recently up to a few days ago, and that's to keep our bills current and to make sure that the expenses align with the fiscal year in which the appropriations were made. So these additional adjustments will be necessary to avoid negative balances in those particular accounts.
Well, these were only brought to my attention about 15 minutes ago. And they looked modest to me, and I don't have a problem with it. What I would prefer didn't happen is that we have things brought to us at the last second, even if they are small, and I frankly don't understand it. But I can live with it. It's cleanup. Councilman Miller, what do you think would be the proper procedure for amending this legislation? Just for you to move to amend, if you will. if you're
I
willing
think
to?
the proper procedure would be to make a motion to amend the resolution to add the items that are on the sheet that was distributed by the administration, and so I would make that motion.
Anybody have any questions about the additional items? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the amendment is adopted. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out for this special council meeting. I was glad when I got up after all the wind and rain last night that the temperatures weren't any lower, or we would have been in a different situation possibly. As a reminder, we're here today to approve the year-end fiscal agenda. Up until last year, we used to approve the year-end agenda items early the following year. However, the Auditor of State and their annual audit of Cuyahoga County indicated we have to approve the items in the current fiscal year. The year-end fiscal agenda includes various additional appropriations, appropriation transfers, cash transfers, and a couple of technical amendments to the December 8th fiscal agenda. The various fiscal items include covering year-end deficits in payroll, internal service funds, and space maintenance charges for departments throughout the county. Also included in the fiscal items is funding for the second round of demolition, as well as funding for capital projects, including the Virgil Brown Building, the county airport, the Huntington Park Garage, and the various sanitary engineer projects. Finally, the fiscal agenda includes funding for the electronic poll books for the Board of Elections, where we will get reimbursed 74% for the total cost from the state of Ohio. We were all sent this fiscal agenda last week, and some council members submitted questions in advance of today's meetings to the fiscal office, which we have received in response back. Copies of those questions and answers are provided to you today. I'm okay with moving forward with these items and the additional smaller ones. Staff from OBM and fiscal office are here today if you have any additional questions. And so, do any of my colleagues have any additional questions or comments? Councilman Miller.
Just a comment, I would like to commend the administration for taking a stronger line in terms of cleaning up the negative balances and the other financial discrepancies in the accounts. And I think once we get this done, it's going to create a cleaner and better picture of where we stand. And I look forward to seeing the year-end result, and I think it'll give us a very good picture of exactly where we are. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just a question.
Yes.
With all the focus and all that conversation about the 27th pay, how do we still have to fix the 27th pay even here today at the 11th hour, it looks like?
Councilman.
I mean, We heard about it, and heard about it, and heard about it. I certainly wouldn't have thought we would be having a corrective action at the 11th hour on this.
It was a combination of the cost of living increases that were passed by some of the outside agencies that we weren't sure about at the time they were done, if it incorporated the 27th pay or not. So we had everybody go back at year end to make sure that all the payroll appropriations were in line. It may be, it's referenced in here as a 27th pay, but it's also coincidental with some of the adjustments that were necessary for some of those cost of living increases that were granted at the beginning of the year. And for overtime, I'm sorry.
Oh, so this overtime is an adjustment for the cost of living that took place for overtime hours that were subsequent to whoever we had original numbers. Is that what I assume your lifeline was called in on that one?
Maggie Keenan, Office of Budget Management. So the 27th pay, we underestimated in Job and Family Services because they've had overtime that was in excess of what we anticipated.
To the tune of these numbers here? Is that what you're talking about? So we're talking about $265,000 that we didn't anticipate in overtime? Wow, okay. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Yes, Councilman.
While we're on the subject of budgeting and cleanups and such things, I would just like to put a request out there, which is that starting next year, when you send the bi-monthly fiscal agendas over, I know from time to time that you'll have to draw on the emergency funds that we appropriated into the budget, either on we have some that are above the line and some that are below the line, and I would just like it noted in the fiscal agenda whenever we tap into those funds, so that we can kind of keep a running total and know where we are. I'm a little bit concerned that over the course of the year that we've had a lot of stuff that were kind of unanticipated, and I'm hoping and believing that in preparing the new budget that we've done a better job than we've done in the past in anticipating all the various expenditures. And I know the administration tried to do that, and I would like to kind of monitor that going forward. Thank you.
Councilman Germain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, this is not an immediate question, but I noticed in the question and answers the balance of the self-insurance fund, and both for the county and for the regionalization is not yet reconciled. Just wondering about how long is it going to take? Is this a multi-year reconciliation, or is this just recent?
Mr. Jamata, we should have those numbers for a final preliminary reconciliation probably next week. What we had to do was go back to the genesis of the contract. There was, and I think I had testified in a couple other hearings, that there was a mix-up in how some of the bills were paid. Bills that were associated with the regional programs were paid against county funds and vice versa. We're in the process of trying to align those now. We've actually kept paying those medical insurance bills through yesterday to stay current, as opposed to in prior years when they were cut off in late October, early November. But we should have a final reconciliation of that available next week. We're working with the Internal Audit Department to come up with that.
And then just one other point, over the holidays I was at a function with government officials, and was approached by the people from the city of Euclid concerning the regionalization fund. So could get information on that at the beginning of next year.
I do believe, Mr. Jamato, that we're in the process of contacting them to set up a meeting to discuss and explain some of the background and the history that went into the rate increase that they were burdened with.
Any other questions, comments? I'd like to move that we, move the resolution as amended. Have a second?
Mr. Chairman, actually, all you need is a voice vote at this point, because it was already moved in the beginning. So I
Okay,
apologize if I wasn't clear on that.
all right. Okay. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Does this have to be an individual voice vote? So we're good. Resolution is passed as amended. Thank you for your time. Thanks for everybody coming down, and have a good new year. I know we're not quite finished.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I got public comment unrelated to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Liu?
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. Very nice to see everybody. Since it has been 8 months, our Councilwoman Conwell was very nice to come to the Homeless Congress meeting. So basically, County Council finally received formal complaints or the case about certain things concerning homeless people, especially women's shelter. But now it has been 8 months. Lots of things are still the same. But I'm very happy for the agenda item we had here. I can see county council members are really working hard to get lots of things to catch up. The problem has been there for 12, 13 years, but right now, I think you're aware of it for this 8 months. So I wish for the new year, we can all work on this problem too, to get it move on a little bit faster, so we will have less problems to worry about. Well, up to now, the place is still crowded, very crowded, also partially because of the construction, which is good for the building. And also, we finally realized why the place never has enough food, because for a place average, you have 180, 200 people, the food was always ordered no more than 165 servings. And also, we still have people having lots of health issues, but we cannot really find the right place for them to go to. And fortunately, right now, Caroline and some of the community partners are working on solutions, try to move the clinic hours to evening to help more people. And some things finally is going on. I really have to thank our Councilwoman Conwell. You finally started our moving and our communication. And I wish the new year will be really good for all of us, women's shelter, the whole county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? This special meeting is adjourned.